threat intelligence fundamentals, sorry. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so my name is Doreen Ochum. I'm a cybersecurity analyst with interest in SOC operation and governance. And basically, I try to explore the intersection between governance and compliance, as well as blue team operations. And I'm one of the co-founders of the FOSEC, which is a cybersecurity awareness platform. Right now, we blog on Medium. Our aim is to just create cybersecurity awareness in our community and do what we can for our community. So you can find me, you can find my articles on the FOSEC. In my articles, you can find a link to my LinkedIn and my Twitter. So if it's okay with you guys at SheHacks, shall I begin?
Yes, please.
Okay. So today I'll be taking you through, what is threat intelligence, the current threat landscape and why it calls for threat intelligence, the different types of threat intelligence, and, how to keep yourself up to date on what is going on, as well as some of the benefits of threat intelligence. So, sorry, just a moment. So what is threat intelligence? Threat intelligence, or cyber threat intelligence, CTI, is information that organizations and people use to understand the threats that we currently have, we will have, or threats that are targeting an organization, so we can better prepare for any events that are likely to happen, any attacks that are likely to happen. And just to give you a brief history of where, what prompted the threat intelligence, in the early 2000s, we had some major attacks, one of them primarily being the Stuxnet. And during that time, one of the very first, threat intelligence reports to ever come out was the APT1 report by Mandiant. And basically the report highlighted all to do with, the tactics, techniques, and procedures that, threat actors, which is ATP1, had been carrying out over the past few years, which is from the years 2006 from early 2006 to around 2010, 2013. And they were able to attribute that, ATP1 was China, and they were able to look at the patterns of these attacks and say that it was agents in China who were acting against, countries in the greater Europe as well as the Americas. And, further leading to that, we have the MITRE attack framework, which is a framework that helps you identify the various techniques and tactics that adversaries use to have attacks on organizations, on nations, which they started working on it in around 2013. But in the year 2015, it was, released to the public. So we can see that those are the very first, the foundational, rather, of threat intelligence. And so the MITRE attack, they have a framework, I'll show you one as we go on, how they enable you to identify the various threat actors that may be targeting an organization. So as we know from the art of war, the art of cyber war, every cyber battle is won before it is fought. So this is the aim of threat intelligence, to be able to analyze the information that we have, the information that other organizations have collected over time, so that we can be able to foretell and anticipate any coming attacks, or and also how other organizations have dealt with them. Therefore, it can indicate how we are going to deal with them as they come up. So basically, our threat landscape, the National KESAT, which has various statistics on threats that happen in our cyberspace, have detected an increase. Last year, they detected an increase in attacks of around 37%, which is April to June 2021. And then from the cost of a data breach report by IBM, we can see that the average cost of a data breach increases every year, which is about an average of about 10% over the past 10 years, which is, So the average number of days it takes to detect or identify a breach is around 187. By then, so much damage has already been done, which you can tell by the various attacks we've had in the past, especially in the West, on critical infrastructure, and also on, the various supply chain attacks that we've had. And these are just some more statistics on, the current landscape and the need for it. So now when we try and break down, what is a threat to you, a threat to your organization. Here we look at the intent, which is what an attacker or an adversary wants from you. Either they would like, to access your proprietary information. They would like to take down a service, maybe through a denial of service attack, or the intents they can have, various intents. And then you have capability, which is the ability of your adversary to breach, your organization to achieve their goals. And then you have an opportunity, which is your adversary's timing and knowledge of your environment and its vulnerabilities. Let's say in the case of zero-day attacks, as of yet, because it is a zero-day attack, there is no known countermeasure when it comes to it, and they're very rare to find. So in the event that, an adversary identifies a particular zero-day attack that you probably haven't patched up or haven't even looked into yet, and, by that they've identified an opportunity that, so combining their intent, their capability, which especially with ATPs, which is advanced persistent threats, some of them are state-funded and their resources are limitless. So basically their capability to attack and compromise infrastructure and data is unparalleled. Like, they have the funding, they have the resources, they have the ability to carry out an attack. So this poses a threat to individuals and to organizations. So we'll just dive right into the different types of intelligence. So we classify them generally into, long-term use, short-term use, and also what goes to high-level use and low-level. By high-level and low-level, we look at high-level, which is from the decision-making perspective, which is higher up in an organization. Basically, the guys who come up with the rules for everything, and they come up with the strategic rules in an organization, which is the managers, the C-suite, which is the CEO, the CFO, CISO, basically the high-level decision makers. And then low-level, now we come down to the people who are in the SOCs, the different levels of the SOCs, and the kind of attacks that they deal with every day, and the kind of alerts they get every day, and whether they escalate them into incidences or false alerts. So we have, on a high level, we have strategic and operational, which is high level executive and management in strategic, and security managers or network defenders in operational. So on the lower level, we have tactical and technical intelligence. So I'll take, let's say, a bottom-up approach, which is coming from the technical approach, which is from a SOC level, because they're the ones who detect, the various incidences that we have. So in terms of technical intelligence. This focuses on the indicators of an attack and the proof of attack at the very foundation level. So here we have, the various indicators of compromise. Are there C2 channels that are communicating? What tools have been picked up to be within the network? What are there any reported, malicious or suspicious IP addresses? Any phishing email content? Are there any, documents that have been downloaded by users, or any links that have clicked on that have downloaded maybe third-party software or documents, especially with the ability to attack from the, users and everyday people are the weakest link in any organization, or just us. We are easily fooled by what looks legitimate. And here we also take in, malware samples and, URLs. This free gifts we see, or maybe if they're targeting a particular organization, they can say there's a particular software update. So if you're not up to date on what is going on and how to identify these various attack channels, especially with social engineering, it can pose a challenge on the organization. So some of these technical intelligence also include like endpoint IP addresses, domains, phishing email headers, and malware hash checksums. So basically, let's say in a SOC layout for maybe at level 1, we have, various IPs that are detected as well as suspicious domains. So with threat intelligence, we should be able to collect this information over time and be able to identify either certain attackers who use those particular channels, of which the challenge now with technical intelligence comes in is that IP addresses change over time. But when it comes to things like the channels that certain attackers use, their techniques are more or less the same, but their techniques are more or less the same, but their tactics change. Maybe they can change. If a domain is flagged, they can change the domain. If an IP address is flagged, they can change the IP address. But basically the channel of breach, maybe should it be phishing, they will most likely still use phishing to come into an organization or to attack a particular user. But when it comes to certain malware, might not really be changed that often, but it also can. So by identifying the malware that came in and being able to hash it and have, the checksums that identify malicious software. So now we move on to the tactical intelligence. Tactical intelligence seeks to identify how a threat actor plans to attack an organization and match this with known detection and mitigation strategies. That because you will find in various industries, they have, for example, if it's the banking sector, they probably have been hit with the same techniques or the same tactics, the same TTPs. So with them sharing the intelligence that they have, they can prevent other banks from being attacked. Basically, when you look at organizations within a particular domain, they have sort of similar attacks. So by being able to identify and collect this information, we can attribute whether, let's say, if the Russians right now are very much into attacking banks, then we can say, given these IPs, given these ways of these TTPs of attacking, then we can be able to attribute, maybe it could be coming from ATP1, ATP23, different ATPs. So basically tactical intelligence provides answers to questions such as, what is the cyber attacker's TTP? what are the goals of a cyber attacker, what are the mitigation strategies that are provided for incoming attacks. So by us being able to identify the goal, then we can identify if you find certain behavior in your network or in your organization that you can attribute it to a particular ATP or a particular adversary, then you can be able to say that, given knowing that this particular adversaries usually look for proprietary information, so they would most likely be going after, either the user data that you have or the proprietary information that you have on devices that you're making or software that you're producing. Therefore, you can look at how has this been mitigated in the past, and you can apply that to the current situation that you're in. And then we look at sources of this tactical CTI is mostly open source intelligence, which is gathered through, malware samples and analysis, attack group reports, malware and incident reports, campaign reports, and human intelligence and the deep dark web. So this can be gotten from a lot of threat intelligence feeds, depending on the capability of an organization. Some organizations have the capability to have, a threat intelligence program at very large organizations who have the capability. But when it comes to smaller organizations, they prefer to outsource some of these services. So that's where it's helpful where you have your organization seek this intel from threat feeds that are constantly scouring, either be it the dark web, be it incidents that have been reported by other companies that have experienced a similar thing. So by TTPs, we look at the differences between a tactic and a technique. A tactic is let's say an adversary was trying to gain access into your organization. Basically, they were doing reconnaissance, which is they were trying to look at how best can we attack this particular organization. So during their recon, maybe they were scanning your ports, they were seeing what is open, what is live, what numbers are you using? Are you using the default ones or have they changed? In their initial access, which is the tactic, which is the what. So they wanted to gain initial access. It could be drive by compromise. It could be phishing. Basically, the tactic is what did they want to do? And then technique, how did they achieve the particular goal? And then we'll move on to more of the higher level intelligence, which is operational intelligence. And on operational intelligence, it answers the how and where at an operational level that, our threat actors, TTP, explains based on the techniques and how they gained access into your organization. This also it needs you to be able to know the cyber kill chain, which is what is really the anatomy of an attack. How does it begin? Does it begin on recon and how it progresses until to the exfiltration stage? So once you can identify the various levels or the various stages of an attack, then you can be able to know that now the operational intelligence is able to map that based on how they carried out every single stage of an attack. Then it can be said, these guys do it this way, these ones do it this way. So different adversaries have different ways of carrying out an attack. It helps you get an understanding of their capability, how they're funded, the kind of tools they use. If they're very advanced, then it's highly likely that it's an ATP, that maybe they're funded maybe by a government. If they're if they're using things like 0 days, then you know that is a highly funded ATP. But if they're using I wouldn't say simple, but other means, you'd be able to attribute them to a particular adversary. So here we focus on attack knowledge, which provides insight into factors such as the nature, motivation, timing of an attack, and an attack method. Especially with timing, the time an attack was carried out you can be able to use it to see if it comes to a particular region because of the time differences. So timing can be key to what particular region was carrying out the attack. If it's during the day, it's probably you have the same time differences, or maybe the attacker has gone out of their way, to make sure when the attack is being carried out, there would be no one to flag it. Maybe if it's happening, for example, if we take an example of the bank heist that happened, I think it was in Bangkok, and you'd find that the adversaries attacked on a long weekend when no one was in the office. So that timing can tell you they had done their recon very well. They knew that would be the best time to strike. So in operational intelligence is where we look at a more proactive approach in identifying threats, which is like threat hunting. So in threat hunting, there's a very interesting way of, you're being more proactive in looking for threats. So you're not waiting for it to happen to you as such. You're out there, you're looking for what attacks are going on currently and who is facing them. What is the likelihood of it affecting us? So basically you're out there, you're scouring the depths of the internet, trying to look at what is most likely to attack our particular organization or our particular kind of infrastructure, and how can we mitigate it. And a very interesting example of, being proactive with threat hunting is the use of what we call canary tokens. Canary tokens you can use them to basically, for example, it can be a file that you've downloaded, and once an adversary gets into your network and is able to download the particular file, it will give them an alert of this. It will give you an alert of this file has been accessed from this IP with this device. So you can be able to tell that there has been a breach on your network or on your infrastructure. All by being that you stored some files which were decoy files. Once they were opened, you could be able to tag. So you can be able to detect an attack in its very early stages, which can help you in, incident response. And also this is where threat intelligence feeds come in handy. And, and basically open source intelligence, because Twitter is actually very good with letting you know what's happening in the threat intelligence world. And then now we move on to the strategic intelligence. Strategic intelligence is more of higher level intelligence, which is the people who deal with this strategic intelligence can be the C-suite people, who are the CISOs, the CEO, the CTO. So once you have identified these TTPs from a lower level, from the technical, the tactical, and the operational intelligence, now it's time to turn it into actionable intelligence. This actionable intelligence can let us identify and have strategies against it. Basically, strategic intelligence now provides answers to questions such as, who are your adversaries? What do they want? What could be the financial impact of a cyber attack? Who are the threat actors? And what are the attack trends that are happening? And what is the statistical information about the data breaches? What are the cyber attacks for companies in the same industry? Have there been cyber attacks against your organization in the past? And based on that maybe a previous attack that you've had and the data you've stored, you're able to anticipate any further attacks and how they come in. So you will be able to detect them at an earlier stage, rather than having detecting them during like the exfiltration stage, where you have probably your services are down or you've lost data. And then with the information you have gathered, the TTPs, which gave you the technical and tactical know-how, as well as the operational, you can look at what actions can you put forward to lessen or reduce your risk profile. Because with reduced risk, there's increased profitability. So now I'll just take you sort of back to when we talked about the tactical intelligence. Now, on, let's say, as the point of contact in your organization, you would want to have some resources that help you, let's say, be able to tell who are your adversaries and what kind of techniques are you likely to have with particular adversaries. So frameworks such as the MITRE ATT&CK framework, let me just project it right now. So yeah, with the MITRE ATT&CK, you can be able to see the different stages of, an attack and what it would take for an adversary, or the different tactics and techniques that an adversary would employ to gain access to your organization. So we have recon, resource development, initial access, execution. So at every one of these stages, we have different techniques and different tactics that you could use. Be it active scanning, you can look at, they provide resources on what have been the mitigations that have been employed in tactic scanning. When was it last? They give you information on, when it was created, when a particular tactic was, let's say, discovered or identified, and having been identified at a particular time, how was it mitigated? So with that, now you can look at different tactics, which are, was it recon? Sorry. So whether it was recon, initial access, persistence, privilege escalation, you can be able to identify the tactics. And you can go as far as to look at, the different, also within those particular tactics, the techniques that an attacker used. And when you look at certain techniques, you can go further to be able to identify what adversaries have been linked to those particular TTPs. And certain, if you look at the descriptions of certain APTs, most of them, for example, this APT12, they target a variety of victims, including not limited to media outlets, high-tech companies, and multiple governments. So if you happen to be a media outlet, you can go through the different techniques that have been used. You can see how to anticipate the different techniques that have been used. Therefore, you can be able to, let's say, even have a role play within your organization and be able to anticipate certain attacks. Therefore, you can mitigate against them even before they happen. And you can also develop, rule books and playbooks where you can be able to go further down to explain, in the event of a particular attack that we have noticed this particular industry, let's say if you're within the media industry, we have noticed that these various media companies and media houses are being attacked through this particular way. So we anticipate being attacked in this particular way. And in the event that the adversaries attack us in this particular way, this is what we are supposed to do. So basically that cuts down the time it takes to detect a breach, and it also lowers your risk because there's a lot of resources that go into incident response and incident mitigation. If you're able to anticipate them, then you are able to stop them before it gets really bad. And MITRE ATT&CK also has, what you call the MITRE ATT&CK navigator. So here you can be able to look at the techniques, you can be able to look at your IOCs, which are your indicators of compromise, and map them according to the framework that is laid out. So once you finish mapping them, you can be able to attribute them, you can be able to find ways to mitigate them also. And also on threat hunting and taking more of a proactive approach, any hashes that, are detected, you can run them by applications or services such as VirusTotal. You can check for any suspicious hashes. Have they also been detected previously? And with let me just show you. Sorry, let me share my screen again. Okay, so with whatever has been detected, let's say you detected a particular hash. Let me just try an example. You can be able to see, has it been detected before? So this would alert you that this particular hash is malicious, or this particular hash of like for example, this was an executable file that comes in Excel and also Word. So they were hiding the malware within the particular file. So with VirusTotal, you can be able to also proceed and get, an overview of once the particular document is downloaded. It also communicates to maybe either be it a C2 server to download more documents or to download more malware that is hidden as documents. And taking more of a proactive approach, you can also move into, just tools, for example, like the Cisco Talos Intelligence, where you can look at any malicious IPs that you're probably detecting and you have detected over a period of time, which would generally be within your detection phase, whether it's in a SOC. Yeah, you'd probably go through the same procedures. But the most important thing would be to be able to map out the alerts that you're receiving and all the information you're receiving. Are you able to have that data, have that information, and make it in a way that you can actually act on the information that you have? Because if it's all data, it's not useful to you until it becomes, actionable information, which is intelligence in that case. So basically, with all the data you've collected, your alerts, are you able to store them? Are you able to analyze that data that you have for it to be actionable intelligence? So with this, now I'll go back to my presentation. And then we can look at the benefits of, CTI, cyber threat intelligence, with capability to analyze the information that you have, as well as being able to attribute the adversaries. You can be able to anticipate, plan, and reduce risk. With cyber risk modeling combined with threat intelligence, organizations can assess, the potential impact of cyber risks and have projections of a particular attack. How will it cripple an organization? This is good information, especially for a higher level managerial people, where they can be able to act, or they can be able to anticipate the possible risk associated with a particular attack. And they are able to plan for it in advance. And also, the most important is to produce actionable intelligence. with threat intelligence information, you can be able to also have your own threat intelligence platform where you can be like, these are the attacks that we have detected in an organization or in a particular industry. Then let us share it with other people in the industry and have a sort of threat intelligence platform where we can monitor the trends in a particular industry and be able to mitigate them before they happen. And as I mentioned, it can reduce incidents response time. This will guide in how to respond to a particular incident, should there be an incident rather. Also, this can help in maximizing staffing efficiency. Most SOC teams, it is said that they're only able to investigate a particular amount of alerts, which is the average is 56%. 34% are deemed illegitimate, and it is estimated 25% is usually just a false positive. So if you're able to have projections of what false positive would look like, as well as projections of what actual incidences look like, then these other false positives and time spent on investigating false positives can be reduced. Therefore, you're able to focus on only what matters and not tire out an entire SOC team because there are too many alerts to be investigated, and most of them are not, most of them lead to a dead end. And then we have, which is regulatory and standards compliance. In our client landscape, I guess the biggest one is the Data Protection Act. With a threat intelligence program, or basically when you employ the use of threat intelligence, it gives you basis where you can say that we did all we could do to make sure that the data that we have or the users that we are protecting were not attacked. Therefore, it can serve as sort of regulatory insurance and can lead to the reduction of penalties. So I guess that will be the end of my presentation. I didn't have much to share on the fundamentals. If anyone has any questions, any clarifications that they would need, this would be the time.
If you have any questions, you can raise your hand and I'll unmute you.
Hello.
Hi, Ronald.
Hi, I have a question. So basically the threat intelligence is about monitoring these threats. So have you what incidents have you seen maybe this year? Something like that.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Could you ask your question again?
I'm asking, has there been any incident this year maybe that you can tell us about that you've seen or managed to capture?
I can't tell any I managed to capture, but if we look at what's been good, I guess the most I can mention is about the one that I really understood well was the SolarWinds attack with the supply chain. It was a supply chain attack. So if you look at the IOCs that were within that particular attack, the SolarWinds attack, you can be able to see that companies with providing the same services, whether it's MSPs or even the same company again, being that they've already been attacked and we know the IOCs, they released reports on what happened and there were investigations into the matter, we can be able to predict that it is possible for other other companies that have the same resources or have the same are within the same industry are more than likely to be attacked in the same way, because it was a supply chain attack. So other companies within the same industry have a likelihood of being attacked in the same way. So they can use the data that was collected from that to anticipate any future attacks and be able to mitigate them, whether it's coming up with rule books of what to do in the event of an attack, or whether it's patching up the loopholes that were there in the previous attack. So that's what I can say that I have seen. And based on, I guess, one man's poison can be another man's meat, which is the exact opposite. But based on what happened to them can dictate the standards and precautions that other people in the industry are to take based on that particular scenario. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, you answered. Then I also had another question. After the tactical intelligence, I didn't quite hear the next level. I don't know if you're in a position to reiterate.
After the tactical?
Yeah, the one after tactical, I didn't hear it.
Operational intelligence. Is that what you mean?
Operational, yeah, I think from operational.
Okay, so when I mentioned that operational intelligence answers the how and where of an attack and TTPs that have been gathered. So here we focus on what we have collected over what we have identified in the, I can say in the technical and tactical, to be able to advise. Here I mentioned in the different types, we can use the technical that has been acquired to be able to translate it into operational intelligence that can be able to predict, are there any incoming attacks that we've noticed within the industry, and what is the likelihood of it happening to us? And if the likelihood is high, then that is intelligence that we have that can be able to dictate how we should move on. For example, using threat intelligence feeds, you're able to look at what's happening within the current landscape, what new, be it 0 days that have been found, what new attack vectors have been found. Basically, what opportunities do adversaries have that are new that can affect us? Can we employ? So how did the attack happen, and where specifically, what were they targeting? So, and being able to identify what an adversary needed from a particular company. And as I said, what was their motivation, their timing, and their attack methods, and the nature of a particular attack. So once we get that kind of intelligence, we can be able to see how we can apply it where we can. Is that okay?
Yeah, that answers me. Thank you.
We had a question from Kathy. Let me check if she's still in the room.
Hi, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. First, I just want to compliment the presenter. Very articulate, quite informative, and very practical examples. So I'm just curious, what happens when I hear you using the word adversary. What happens when the adversary is in-house, like attacking you from within? So who watches over the adversary who's attacking from within? I mean, how do you go about it? What are some of the interventions so that your adversary is not, eating you up from within?
Okay, so by identifying the IOCs or indicators of compromise, which can be as simple as have files within an organization been accessed by people who didn't have a particular clearance level, or basically who, if you look at the CIA triad, which is confidentiality, integrity, availability, has confidentiality of data within a particular organization, has it been upheld or has it been breached where it's been, you wouldn't expect, you know, a janitor to have access to database files. So in the event that it is detected that this data has been breached or has been accessed by someone without the preferred level of clearance, those indicators of compromise that cut across your company and how you've structured your alerts and everything can be able to detect, you know, attacks from within. And if you look at around last year, Tesla had an incident where one of their insiders had been approached to divulge sensitive information on. So that would be an example of an insider attack. So if you look at, let's say, people within the particular industry, they would look at if you can identify certain APTs have been known to pay off insider people to provide them with intellectual property. So having identified that, you can now act on your own and say, I would like to be able to detect these particular threats, especially insider threats, being that if you look at other people in other industries, they have, let's say the motor vehicle industry, they have been, their users or the employees were approached to divulge sensitive information. So by looking at what happened to them, you're able to look at, it's possible that it can happen to you. So that's how you deal with insider threats, by looking at how others have been affected. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. I've enjoyed listening in all the way in Netherlands. Good job.
Thank you, thank you. Any other questions? I see Edwin mentioning a zero trust policy in the chats. Is there anything you would like to say or ask about it?
If there are no more questions, if you're ready, Doreen, we can close off the session. Or do you have a few more points to add?
I think that is all for me. Thank you everyone for taking your time to come and learn from me about threat intelligence. Feel free to reach out on Twitter, LinkedIn, and check out the FOSEC articles that we write. There will be a write-up coming up about threat intelligence during the coming week, so you can stay tuned for that. Thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your night.
Oh, thank you. I'd also like to mention that Young CISO is having awards, and our co-founder Eve has been nominated. So if you guys could go and vote, I'll add a link in the chat box. And then Laura is in the chat right now. I wanted to know if she had any final words. If not, we can go ahead and close the session.
Thanks so much, Maria. You can hear me, right?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Thanks, DJ. This has been a very great discussion. Threat intelligence and CTI is definitely something that professionals or people trying to get into the industry need to learn, especially if you're interested in that part of the field. So thank you, DJ. And as Maria mentioned, Eve has been nominated for the Young CISO Awards. So please, it takes a few seconds, just go vote for her and let's win this. Thanks everyone and have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for attending. It's been a very enjoyable session, and thank you for the participation from those who asked questions and those who attended again. So yes, good night everyone, and the link is in the chat box before you leave.
Yes.